UFC 294 is in the bag. I want to give you guys my breakdown on all these fights that just transpired. Saeed Nurmagomedov led off the card with a guillotine choke victory over Muin Gamarov. I mean, this guy shouldn't even have been in this fight at all. Saeed is like levels and levels above this. This fight should not be on a pay-per-view card. It should be a low-level prelim fight. Not so happy about that fight. We knew it was going to happen. You didn't even have to watch it. And then Ikram Aliskerov KO'd Warlley Alves in the first round. Alves has lost to bums like Jeremiah Wells and a slew of other guys that aren't very good. They need to test these fighters a lot more. Aliskerov, we learned nothing about him by fighting Warlley Alves. Alves was no competition for him. He's not even a top 30 fighter in the UFC. He might not even fight in the UFC again. He looked terrible, super overmatched, a fight that we already knew what was going to happen in this fight. And then let's move on to the third fight, Johnny Walker versus Magomed Ankalaev. The fight looked like it was going to be a good one. They were kind of going back and forth a little bit. Each one were landing some of their own strikes. And then Ankalaev kind of got a hold of him against the cage. Walker had his knee down and his hand down, and Magomed Ankalaev landed an illegal knee to the head. Then the doctor was talking to Johnny Walker, and English is not his first language, right? So where is the translator translating between the doctor and the fighter? And then the doctor heard something he didn't like. I guess John Kavanaugh, the coach of Johnny Walker, said that he was in the desert, and the doctor didn't really like that answer. I mean, he got blasted by that knee. So you definitely need to have a translator in the middle of all that. The doctors for this card were an abomination, and wherever they found these guys, they need to put them back to wherever the hell they came from, because it was a disaster the entire card. I don't know if they're going to run it back. We'll see. There seems to be a lot of bad blood between those guys. It was a pretty blatant, illegal knee to the head. And in my opinion, it should have been a disqualification, not a no contest. So what, you could just blast people in the head, and then you either get a guy who's compromised coming back in the fight, or it's a no contest. I mean, these guys need to be penalized so they don't do these illegal moves. I mean, like Peter Yan, Ankalaev, with these like knees to the head, like what are these guys doing, man? Like you can't, like it wasn't even close. The Johnny Walker one was not even close. He was dead on the ground, knee and hand, blasted in the head. No contest. Then we move on to Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat came out hot like we thought. He kind of took Kamaru Usman down. I don't know if it was a 10-8. He didn't land a lot of damage. He controlled Kamaru Usman for the entire round. There's no doubt about that. But did the fight almost get stopped at any point? I don't think so. I think that was a 10-9 round. And then the scorecards were all over the place. It was crazy. I think one judge had it a draw. The other two had it 29-28 for Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat said he broke his hand early in the fight. So in the second and third rounds, we saw him slow down considerably. So if this was a championship fight, fourth and fifth round, it could have got really interesting moving forward. But it sucks we only got 3 rounds. Usman was kind of slow to get going. He's only on 12 days notice, so I mean, you could kind of understand why he, wasn't really in the fight in the first, 5 minutes of it. He got dominated in that first round, but it was a pretty good fight in the second and third round. Kamaru Usman clearly won the second round, and the third round was kind of a toss-up. I don't know. You could have really went either way on both those second and third round, because Khamzat landed takedowns at the end of the fight, but the striking was controlled, and he landed a lot more strikes. Usman landed a lot more strikes, so it was pretty close. And then we move on to Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski. I mean, Islam shot in early, and Volk stuffed the takedown really well. I thought this fight was going to be 5 rounds for sure, a back and forth affair. And then Islam, I'm going to say it right here and there, Islam Makhachev is a better fighter than Khabib Nurmagomedov. He has a lot more ways to win. You know what Khabib was going to do. He was going to take you down, kind of do that swan thing with your legs and kind of get on top of you and mount you and ground and pound you. But man, Islam Makhachev has some of the best kicks in the UFC. He was cracking him with those body kicks, man, and then those hands went lower, and Volk is already a shorter guy. So it doesn't take much to land that head kick over the top of the guard of Volkanovski, and that's exactly what happened. Islam looked like a world beater. He looked like he was in incredible shape. And man, like I was saying in my earlier videos, he's so much bigger than Volkanovski, man. Islam should definitely be fighting at 170 pounds. He barely makes the weight at 155, and then he's fighting the 145 champ. I mean, he's given up 4 or 5 inches, and then at least 20 or 25 pounds in the cage for sure. And then Volkanovski, 12 days notice, he's got to cut all that weight in 10 days to get down to the 155-pound limit. And then he had elbow surgery 3 months ago. I mean, there were so many things going against Volkanovski. I thought Islam was going to win, and he won in dominant fashion. I don't know what's next for Islam. I guess Dustin Poirier is probably the hardest fight for him, I would say. Because when you're left-handed and you're facing another southpaw, it's harder to land those head kicks. And like when Dustin Poirier got that head kick landed against him against Justin Gaethje, it was from the orthodox stance. So when you're fighting a guy who's different than your stance, it's a lot easier to land those head kicks. So I don't know. I don't know anyone that beats him at 155 pounds. Islam is probably going to fight Justin Gaethje next, but we'll see what happens with Charles Oliveira and see how that cut heals. It was a pretty gnarly cut, so I don't see him fighting for a few months. But I don't know what happens. It was such a short-lived fight. It was only in the middle of the first round that this fight ended. So Islam could turn around quickly. We could see maybe a Justin Gaethje-Islam fight maybe in February, late January. We'll see what happens. But let me know in the comments below. Did you like this card? It was so-so. I wish some of the earlier fights on this card were a little more competitive. You really want to open up a card, especially a pay-per-view, with a banger. And that Saeed and Nurmagomedov fight was not that at all whatsoever. All right, guys, we'll catch you guys on the next fight. There's a week off of UFC fights, so there's no UFC fights this week. And then next week, the following week after that, we'll be back. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.